The story begins with a poor but kind-hearted youthful man named Ma Liang, who's known for his cultural bents. Ma Liang lived in a small ville, where he plotted to make ends meet. Despite his delicate circumstances, Ma Liang no way lost his passion for art. He spent his days sketching and painting, landing the beauty of the ville and its people in his art. Ma Liang's art was a source of joy and alleviation for everyone in the ville. He'd frequently paint pictures of the townies, and these oils would come from treasured family heritages, passed down through generations. Despite his poor fiscal situation, Ma Liang was always willing to give away his art to those who could not do it. His kindness and liberality were well known in the ville. Ma Liang's art wasn't only a source of joy for the townies but also a reflection of his kind-heartedness. His oils frequently depicted the struggles of the poor and the marginalized, reflecting his empathy for their plight. His art was an important tool that he used to bring attention to the issues faced by the poor and to inspire others to take action to help them. Despite his delicate circumstances, Ma Liang no way lost his passion for art, and his kindness and liberality endeared him to the townies, who saw him as a true artist, who used his bents to make a difference in their lives. One day, while Ma Liang was out sketching in the country, he met a mysterious old man. The old man told Ma Liang that he'd been watching his art and was impressed by his bents and kind heart. The old man also presented Ma Liang with a magic paintbrush and told him that the paintbrush had the power to bring his oils to life. At first, Ma Liang was skeptical, but the old man explained that the paintbrush was an important tool that could be used to bring good to the world. He told Ma Liang that the paintbrush would give him the power to change the world with his art, to help the poor and the marginalized, and to bring a stopgap to those who were suffering. Ma Liang was overjoyed and thankful. He took the paintbrush and promised to use it wisely and for the lesser good. He thanked the old man and asked him for his name, but the old man simply smiled and faded. Ma Liang was eager to test the paintbrush's powers, so he went back to his ville and started painting. He painted a Colosseum of rice, and to his amazement, the Colosseum of rice came to life, and it was enough to feed his entire ville. From also on, he was known as the Magic Painter, and his art was no longer just a reflection of his bents, but an important tool for change. The magic paintbrush was a gift that changed Ma Liang's life, and it would change the lives of numerous others, as he'd use it to bring stopgap and help to those in need. It was a memorial that imagination and creativity can be important tools to change the world, and that with determination, one person can make a big difference. At first, Ma Liang used the paintbrush to help the poor and indigent in his ville. He realized that with the power of the paintbrush, he could produce palpable objects, similar to food, apparel, and sanctum, that would help the people in his ville who were floundering to survive. Ma Liang began by painting colosseums of rice, apparel, and indeed houses for the poor and the homeless. He'd paint these objects and bring them to life, and also he'd give them down to those who demanded them. His oils weren't just art, but an important tool for change. His art was now suitable to feed the empty, clothe the naked, and shelter the homeless. Ma Liang's conduct had a profound impact on the ville. People who had preliminarily been floundering to survive were now suitable to eat, wear warm clothes, and have a roof over their heads. His art was suitable to make a real difference in their lives, and it brought stopgap and joy to the people of the ville. Ma Liang's use of the paintbrush to help the poor and indigent in his ville wasn't only a demonstration of his kindness and compassion, but also a memorial that with creativity and imagination, we can come up with innovative results for the problems we face. It's also a memorial that small acts of kindness can have a big impact and that the power of art can be used to make a positive change in the world. As Ma Liang became more professed with the paintbrush, he began to use it to produce more elaborate and imaginative oils. He started to experiment with different styles and ways, and he began to produce workshops of art that weren't only beautiful but also had a deeper meaning and purpose. Ma Liang's art began to reflect the struggles and shafts faced by the poor and marginalized in his ville. He started to paint scenes of poverty, injustice, and inequality, and through his art, he brought attention to the issues faced by the poor and inspired others to take action to help them. Ma Liang also began to use the paintbrush to produce fantastical geographies and brutes, inspired by his imagination. He'd paint dragons, phoenixes, and other fabulous brutes, and bring them to life. These oils weren't only beautiful but also served as a memorial of the power of imagination and how it can be used to produce a better world. Ma Liang's use of the paintbrush to produce more elaborate and imaginative oils wasn't only a demonstration of his cultural chops but also a memorial of the power of art to inspire change and to bring attention to important issues. It also stressed the significance of imagination in creating a better world. His art was a reflection of his bents, his imagination, and his desire to make a positive impact on the world. The original officers, who were greedy and loose, became jealous of Ma Liang's power and the impact he was having on the ville. They saw Ma Liang's oils as trouble to their power, and they began to compass against him. The officers, who were used to getting rich by exploiting the poor, saw Ma Liang's oils as trouble to their power. They saw how his art was bringing stopgap and help to the poor, and they were bothered that their power and influence would be lowered. They began to spread rumors and lies about Ma Liang. They said that his oils weren't real and that he was a fraud. They also tried to discredit him by spreading rumors that he was using dark magic and that his art was dangerous. The officers also began to press the townies to stop seeking Ma Liang's help and to stop supporting him. They hovered to take down the food, apparel, and sanctum that Ma Liang had painted for them if they didn't misbehave. Ma Liang, still, was determined to continue using his art to help the poor and the marginalized. He knew the power of his oils and he knew that they were the only stopgap for numerous people in the ville. He refused to back down, and he was determined to stand up against the officers, who were trying to silence him and take away the help and hope that his oils were brought to the ville. Ma Liang, being a clever and resourceful youthful man, decided to use his imagination and the power of the paintbrush to outwit the officers. He knew that the officers were important, but he also knew that they were loose and that their rapacity would be their downfall. Ma Liang began to use the paintbrush in new and creative ways to help the poor and indigent in his ville. He'd paint retired paths and secret doors that would lead the poor and indigent to food, apparel, and sanctum. Indeed, when the officers had taken down the effects he'd painted for them, Ma Liang also started to use the paintbrush to expose the corruption and shafts of the officers. He'd paint scenes of poverty, injustice, and inequality, and bring them to life, showing the townies the verity of the officers and their conduct. His oils came as an important tool for change. They weren't only beautiful but also served as substantiation of the corruption and shafts that the officers were committing. Ma Liang's use of the paintbrush to outwit the officers and continue to help the poor and indigent wasn't only a demonstration of his cleverness and resourcefulness, but also a memorial of the power of imagination and creativity to overcome adversity. It also stressed the significance of standing up against injustice and using all the coffers at our disposal to make a positive change in the world. Ma Yang's use of the paintbrush and his imagination inspired numerous in the ville to use their imagination and creativity to ameliorate their lives. His oils not only brought stopgap and help to the poor, but they also served as a memorial that with imagination and creativity, anything is possible. As the townies saw the impact of Ma Yang's oils, they began to realize that they too had the power to change their lives and their community. They began to use their imagination and creativity to come up with new results for the problems they faced. The townies began to plant auditoriums, set up small businesses, and indeed start their community systems, all inspired by the art of Ma Yang. His art came as a catalyst for change, it sparked a sense of stopgap, and it inspired the people of the ville to take control of their own lives and to produce a better future for themselves and their community. Ma Yang's influence also spread beyond the ville, as people from other municipalities and townlets came to see his art and learn from him. His oils and his communication of stopgap and change inspired numerous people to use their imagination and creativity to ameliorate their lives and their communities. In summary, Ma Yang's use of the paintbrush and his imagination inspired others in the ville to use their imagination and creativity to ameliorate their lives. His art came as an important catalyst for change, it sparked a sense of stopgap, and it reminded people that with imagination and creativity, anything is possible. It also stressed the significance of art as a tool for social change and the power of one person's conduct to inspire others. The story reaches a climax when the officers, who had grown decreasingly jealous and hopeless, take the paintbrush for themselves, prisoner Ma Yang. They had grown tired of Ma Yang's capability to outwit them and his uninterrupted success in bringing stopgap and change to the ville, so they decided to take matters into their own hands. The officers set a trap for Ma Yang, and when he was least awaiting it, they captured him. They took him to their fort, where they interrogated him, trying to force him to reveal the secret of the paintbrush's powers. Ma Yang, still, was determined to cover the paintbrush and the stopgap it brought to the ville. He refused to reveal its secrets, indeed when the officers hovered over him with detriment. He knew that the paintbrush was an important tool for change, and he wasn't going to let it fall into the wrong hands. The climax of the story is a turning point. It's a moment when the fate of the ville and the people in it rests on the shoulders of Ma Yang. It's a moment of high pressure and drama, as the officers and Ma Yang engage in a battle of the head, with the fate of the ville and the people in it hanging in the balance. It's a moment when the true strength of Ma Yang's character and determination are tested, and it's a moment that will change the course of the story ever. Ma Yang, being a resourceful youthful man, uses his imagination and the power of the paintbrush one last time to escape and master the officers. He knew that he'd have to act presto before the officers could take the paintbrush for themselves and use it for their gain. He used his cultural bents and his imagination to make up a secret door on the wall of his captivity cell, and with the power of the paintbrush, he brought it to life. He also used the door to escape from his captivity cell and shirk the officers. Once free, Ma Yang knew that he'd to act presto, to stop the officers from taking the paintbrush for themselves. He used the paintbrush to paint an important army of fabulous brutes, similar to dragons, phoenixes, and other magical beasts, and brought them to life. With this army, he was suitable to master the officers and their guards and take back the paintbrush. With the paintbrush back in his possession, Ma Yang used it to make up a new future for the ville. He painted a vision of peace and substance, of a ville where everyone had enough to eat, where everyone had a roof over their head, and where everyone had the chance to live a good life. He brought this vision to life, and it came to a reality. Ma Liang's use of the paintbrush one last time to escape and master the officers, and to bring peace and substance to the ville wasn't only a demonstration of his resourcefulness and frippery, but also a memorial of the power of imagination and creativity. It showed that indeed in the darkest of times, one person's conduct can inspire change and bring a stopgap to a community. It also stressed the significance of standing up against injustice and fighting for what's right, indeed when the odds are against you. The story concludes with Ma Liang passing on the magic paintbrush to a new generation of artists, encouraging them to use their imagination and creativity to make the world a better place. Ma Liang realized that the paintbrush wasn't just a tool for him, but an important armament for change that could be used by anyone with a kind heart and cultural gift. Ma Liang began to educate the youthful artists in the ville on how to use the paintbrush. He showed them how to paint not only beautiful art, but also how to paint results to the problems they faced in their community. He tutored them on how to use their imagination and creativity to bring stopgap and change to the world. The youthful artists were eager to learn, and they snappily picked up the chops that Ma Liang tutored them. They began to use the paintbrush to help the poor and indigent in the villa. They painted food, apparel, and sanctum for them, just as Ma Liang had done ahead. They also began to use the paintbrush to expose the shafts and corruption in their community, just as Ma Liang had done ahead. As the youthful artists continued to use the paintbrush, they began to make a real difference in the lives of the people in the ville. They brought stopgap and change to the community, and they inspired others to use their imagination and creativity to make the world a better place. The story concludes with Ma Liang passing on the magic paintbrush to a new generation of artists, who will continue to use it to bring stopgap and change to the world. It's memorial that one person's conduct can inspire change, and that the power of imagination and creativity can be passed on to unborn generations to make a positive impact on the world. It also highlights the significance of mentorship and the impact that one person can have on the lives of numerous.